Yeah, I'll try and be brief, Chair. I'll speak to some of the concerns raised by Liberal members. They're saying that the minister hasn't had anything to do with it. Well, it was the testimony of officials that the minister's chief of staff, in fact, was part of the decision tree, part of the conversation. We've heard over and over again from Liberals that they don't send political exempt staff to committee and they send the minister instead. So if Liberal members are suggesting that the minister's chief come to appear in her place and then the committee then make a decision on whether or not the minister should come after hearing from her chief, I guess we can have that conversation, but I'm doubtful that that's the case. The minister is responsible for what happens in her department, or she ought to be. Mr. Sorbera took issue with Mr. Genes's asking questions about Mr. Clark's record as a government appointee. I mean, the lack of curiosity, or more like a willful blindness by folks, I'll say opportunists like Mr. Sorbera, doesn't do Canadians any justice.
Point of order, Chair. We're not here to degrade or go at our members
about your point of order.
MP Barrett, we're all representatives for our constituents. You don't need to use that type of language to degrade other MPs. Whether it's a point of order or not, you don't need to go down that path, Michael. Come on, you're better than that. I would hope.
Thank you, Mr. Sorbera.
Please,
Mr. Barrett.
Seriously.
Thanks, Mr. Sorbera. Mr. Barrett, go ahead, please.
Well, if we're invoking first names, Francesco, your lack of curiosity or willful blindness does absolutely nothing to serve the Canadian people. And your interruption of Mr. Genes because you were simply upset that he was asking tough questions about someone who had been appointed by your government, sir, a corrupt government, and that appointee, Mr. Clark, did recommend the head of the company that his children worked for an appointment. That's a blatant conflict of interest. It's very relevant when we have Mr. Clark saying things here. Mr. Johari had said that, Mr. Clark said that he didn't have anything to do with it, and therefore we have to take his word for it. We have officials from your government who in writing said that, in fact, Mr. Clark was part of it. So who's lying? The government officials or the government appointees, or both? And the integrity of the appointments that your government is making, that Minister Jolie is making, she appointed someone who was saying that they were an impartial broadcaster. Meanwhile, during an election, federal elections, one of their children held a senior role with a political party in Canada, with the Liberal Party in Canada. Credibility, integrity, conflicts of interest. Now, these things are very foreign concepts, staying clear of conflicts of interest. We've seen Justin Trudeau twice found guilty of breaking ethics laws. A cabinet of serial ethical lawbreakers. We're going to keep asking tough questions, even if you say our first names and ask us and beg us not to. This isn't about who you know, which unfortunately is how Mr. Clark got that appointment and that $40,000 a month rent subsidy while Canadians are literally freezing in the dark and starving. So the minister is responsible for taking the decision. If she chose to delegate authority, she's ultimately responsible for that. But her chief of staff, we heard from the department officials. The chief of staff was involved in the conversations. So is the proposal to have the chief come? I don't think it is. But we're past that. We want to hear from the minister. And again, to Mr. Genes's point, if history has been any indicator, we're going to get a full court press from the Liberals to protect the minister from having to be accountable to Canadians. That is certainly not the responsibility of members to protect ministers. So let's get the minister to come to committee, answer questions about this. It's an unacceptable purchase. Mr. Clark's answers today were not credible. And I think some of what we heard about his failure to recuse himself from decisions that he ought to have recused himself from in the past tell quite a tale, and the Liberals' strong protest of the examination of those facts is very, very telling. It's important that the minister comes to testify.